Good morning. Welcome back to my channel. We are now retiring abroad finance, formerly preparing for retirement. And yes, I changed the name. We are moving into the retirement phase, so I felt it was a better choice. So anyway, today the video is about testing my plan, my retirement plan again, given that we have completed our objectives of selling the house and getting the dividend purchases, dividend fund, and stock purchases in place. So I did do a video a while back. I will link it here. And it was a walkthrough, my proposed scenario before all of this took place using Boldin. And it was a combination of showing my plan and also showing how to set up Boldin. And it is by far my most popular video. It also generated a lot of questions on the viability of my plan, and so I thought that now that everything has gone through as we had planned it, and now our plan should be on autopilot, that I will go ahead and re-enter all the information in Bolden and just do some stress testing um, to show, me whether or not this is still a viable plan. So I went in and I created multiple scenarios here that we're going to walk through, and I'll show you the results um, of those scenarios. So also, Bolden had made some changes to the Monte Carlo stress testing to, I guess, tweak it just a little bit to make it more accurate. So we wanted to also, I also wanted to see if it was going to change any of my results with my stress tests. So I figured this was a good place to do all this and to update everybody. So here we are. For those of you that have not seen my prior videos, that I will also link here the video that explains my bucket plan, my three buckets, technically it's four, but my three bucket plan for our retirement years. And just a quick, who I am. I am 58 years old. I'm retiring in less than 2 months now. And my husband is 62 and he is already retired. He's been retired for 2 years. Our plan is that we've sold everything and we're going to be slow traveling overseas, launching ourselves out of Australia, which is where one of my children lives with my grandkids. So that's the plan in its entirety. But let's get into Bolden today. Um, and we'll just kind of talk about, how things are set up. So I did go in, wiped everything out. I don't have connections going. They were a pain in the neck to maintain for one of my uh, financial institutions. So I decided just to go in and update it myself. So for accounts and assets, I went ahead and I updated all of the balances here. I went ahead and removed the house. You can see it says renting outside the US $0 a month. That's technically not correct, but for the next couple of months, we have zero rent payment. We're up staying with family before we go. And then I do have a future change, which is September, and that's a monthly rent average because we do have some months in Australia and some months in the United States that we will not have rent every year. So, don't get too stuck on that amount. That's just an average. And then I also have no debt. I have income for a few months more, and then there's our Social Security according to uh, the calculator that factors in that you're retiring early. I can link that video here. And then I have my dividends uh, showing up here, the passive income. If you go into money flows, you can see with this baseline, I don't have any Roth conversions, and I've done my withdrawal strategy based on the spending needs. And my assumptions, I just use the default assumptions for the average, and I've set it to average in today's dollars. And then lastly, if you scroll down under summary, you can see that you've set your retirement ages and then longevity. Myself at 94, it's my family. It's my family. And I'd rather be conservative than run out of money. And then my spouse, 92, that may be pushing it a little bit for him, but he's super healthy and he's already beaten what his parents had passed from. So I choose to be positive and also conservative. Um, so 92, 94. Are we going to have our money? So again, this is the paid version of Boldin. The free version, you won't see some of these features, but you can still get the job done. So let's go into overview, and you can see in my baseline plan with the scenario as it stands right now in real life, no future actions. This is 99% chance of success. They don't give 100, so that's as good as I'm going to get. So I'm pretty pleased. As I said, this is in today's dollars. I'm not modeling any Roth conversions here, so I'm not saying this is the largest it could get. But if I do absolutely nothing now and keep it going from what I have with the averages, that's what we get. I've also done, well, let's take a look at the pessimistic. So with Bolden, pessimistic means that you are pretty much looking at those rates that you give under the pessimistic classification. So I just use their defaults, which is, inflation rate, I think is 6%. Um, Market growth, I think is 2%. And cost of living increase for Social Security 1.5, that kind of thing. They're defaults that are built in. So it's pretty much assuming that will be the average going forward. And so it is very pessimistic, and I'm still hitting a 79% chance of success with my baseline plan. I am counting that a win, and I will tell you why. If you are walking through life and you are doing your retirement thing and spending your money, and you look and you realize, oh, hey, this down market is going on for a while. It's protracted. It's showing no signs of letting up. Are you going to continue to spend your budget amount that you have with the cushion built in and everything? Mine is $4,000. Am I going to continue to spend $4,000 adjusted for inflation every single year? No, I'm not. I'm going to start dialing back on my expenses, and I'm going to see, hey, let's just kind of back this down a little bit. Let's go to less expensive countries. Um, practice some geo arbitrage. Maybe I spend, a couple of months in Vietnam and then a few months in Thailand, and then I go to Cambodia. And those are all right in the same area. So I can take a train there. I can take an inexpensive flight there. So I don't have to use, big travel costs. Maybe I spend a longer amount of time in Australia with family where my rent is low or non-existent. You know, these are the kind of things that you're going to do if you're in a protracted down market. So if I did absolutely nothing and just went whistling into the future and kept spending $4,000, I still have a 79% chance of success. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So I built a scenario for that where I had a pessimistic first decade, and then I started to tweak my expenses a bit. I dialed back on restaurants out. I dialed back on my food bill. I dialed back on entertainment. I dialed back on gift giving, on rent, the whole 9 yards, the things that I could control, my travel costs. And look at that. I'm back at 99%. So I'm feeling really good about that. Now, let's bring it back to average. Okay. And let's take a look at some of the other scenarios that I built. I built scenarios with uh, Roths to maximize my estate value. Okay. And you can see still successful. And I can see my Roths in money flows. Right here, I did them as transfers instead of Roth conversions, but I did them as transfers. Okay. And then you can see in my taxes, which are right here, it's doing all to maximize my state value. It was all in 1 year this year, which I'm sorry, there is no way I'm going to take that kind of tax hit in 1 year. So instead, what I did is I went in and I entered my own Roth conversions that were a little bit more palatable for my estate taxes. And I did a little bit each year until Lou turned 70, and then it stops. And you can see my taxes immediately drop down, and they don't begin to really climb until I start seeing some issues with the taxable accounts getting a little bit too big. Um, so, one function of this is that I still have the dividends turned on for these years, which in reality, once Social Security starts, I'm going to start transferring stuff over to growth funds instead of income so my Social Security doesn't get taxed. But that is a video for another day. So, I've even got some one-time expenses in here. We've got a couple of bucket list things that we want to do in 2026 that are going to, blow out the month. Um, each month. But I did one scenario rather, for one of us dying before we hit 80. So we're not going to have the full, time with two Social Security checks. You can see I'm still at 99%. I'm still at 99%. And that's with an average inflation in returns. If I go to pessimistic, well, now I'm at 60%. But again, I'm not going to continue to pretend that there's nothing going on. I'm going to change my lifestyle. If I start to see my accounts go down rather, I'm going to change my lifestyle to try to preserve some of the capital. And, you know, this isn't really realistic anyway, but I'm just saying, I'm going to change my expenses. That's what I'm going to do. And will it still be down? Yeah, it'll still be down. I won't have as much to leave my children, which they'll survive, but I'm not going to be left with, $30,000 when I'm 94. I'll be left with more than that because I would have changed my spending habits. So, so there's that. So I'm feeling pretty good about my my scenario at this point. We are seeing dividends coming in. Uh, July is the first month that absolutely everything has been in place for the whole month. June, I still didn't have two of the dividend stocks, the more conservative ones. I still didn't have those in place. So I came in just under 4,000, but I did make some tweaks with the plan, and then those were purchased as well. So according to Snowflake Analytics, which I'll drop a little screenshot of right here, I should be seeing somewhere in the realm of 5,900 to 7,500 in dividends per month. We're keeping our expenses at an average of 4,000 a month. So, we should have plenty of cushion. If I am not able to make the 4,000 a month, like I said, I have a cushion. Right now, I have a half a year in cash. I have an emergency fund that's also another half a year in cash. And I have a CD that is another half a year in cash. And I will be continuing to add to that cushion for the next month and 20 days that I am employed. So I should have about 3/4 of a year in that high yield savings cushion, not including the emergency savings, not including the CDs, and and every month that I have more than $4,000 in dividends, that just adds to the cushion. That just adds to the cushion. And then every single year, we will go in and look at it. And if we haven't spent the full amount of the dividends paid in, I will reinvest that money, not back into dividends, but into either CDs or an index fund, something a little bit more um, conservative, or I'll make, if I have other income um, from perhaps YouTube or, you know, in some way, shape, or form, if I had other income, I will go ahead and make contributions to Roth. So, just I have plans here. And then if the absolute worst comes to worst and I have to, uh, supplement my dividend income, I can do that from that cushion amount, or we can take Social Security early. We can do it. So if both of us took Social Security when we hit about 65, so he would start first, and then I would come along 4 years later and take my Social Security, we could very easily live in many countries on the amount of our combined Social Security. We could live on his Social Security before his full retirement age in many countries in the world without even touching savings. So we have redundancy here. I know there's been concern. I've gotten comments where they were very polite. They were very kind. I haven't had anyone unkind at all. But, there have been people that have been very concerned saying that my plan was too tight. I'm not planning for emergencies. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's not tight. It's really not. I'm not going to be in the US, so I don't have to worry about, you know, my property taxes coming suddenly, or, repairs to a house, or damage to a house from being in a hurricane zone, which is where we were before in Florida. And we sold that. We got out from under that vulnerability. We're not going to be vulnerable to a medical event because we're going to be overseas. We will have insurance that will cover us, and cash payer prices are so much more reasonable overseas. Just as an example, I looked into the price of getting a hip replacement, which I will be needing in the next few years. And in Malaysia, the cash price for the whole thing, from the first diagnosis all the way through recovery, the cash price in Malaysia at this time is $7,000. In Thailand, it's $11,000. And these are top rated hospitals in the world. They are above the United States in terms of their uh, ratings by several organizations, including organizations in the United States, which, if I can remember the name, I'll put it on the screen here, but I can't, um, that does the ratings. There's one that rates from within the United States. It's very highly regarded, and they take into account the cost, the availability, and the quality. And we are down the list, folks. In the US, we are down the list. So I don't have that vulnerability. I've accounted for long-term care. I have seen for myself with my own eyes and done a tour of an assisted living facility in Thailand that we would be more than happy to go into, that for the two of us, for everything included, would cost us $3,000 a month. That's food, that's lodging, that's Wi-Fi, entertainment. They'll drive you everywhere you need to go. $3,000 a month. You really just can't, you know, I've tried to account for everything here. You can't, but I've tried. So anyway, here is my updated Boldin scenario. Let's just look real quick at the Monte Carlo. I'm looking at varying investment returns. I'm looking at varying general inflation. I didn't check these off because, as I said, I'm not going to be vulnerable to medical inflation as you would be if you stayed in the US, not at the same rate anyway. And I don't have any wages after a month and a half. So here it is. Monte Carlo, 10th percentile. I'm still absolutely fine. Let's look at some of the other scenarios with the Monte Carlo. Here's the pessimistic first decade, also known as sequence of returns risk. And look at that. I'm still fine. Roth conversions. I am still fine. Roths maximized to estate value. Still fine. One of us passing away before the age of 80, so we only have one Social Security check. Still fine. So, you know, you got to take a chance in life sometimes. You do. You can't plan for everything. This is our dream, and I've done my best to build safeguards into our plan. I've built in redundancy. I've got the majority of our investments in conservative investments. I think the last time that I checked, my ratio was 78% index or stocks and equities, and that is equities. Sorry, 78% equities, 22% uh, fixed income. So, not even the 80/20. It might be 70%, 30%. I'm trying to remember, but I know that it was, saying, okay, you're fine, don't worry about it kind of thing. It's not like I'm 99% equities and 1% fixed income. That's not it at all. So, in any case, you got to take a chance sometimes. You got to go after your dreams sometimes. I've tried to build in redundancy or safeguards. I, we're keeping our expenses low by using geo arbitrage, which is when you go live in cheaper countries or less expensive countries using a more valuable currency as your own. So I'm taking the dollar and I'm taking the dollar elsewhere in the world where it is strong. So, for us, it looks like this is going to work. And, I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm very pleased with this. I will be looking at 2026 at the end. At the end of 2025, I will look at 2026 and see if I have to tweak anything, see how our first 3 months went, and of course, I will update here. So, thank you very much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. And if you like this content, please do like and subscribe. I'm trying my best to get the word out that you don't have to have $3 million to retire. You can do it. You could do this scenario in the United States. It would be harder. I would probably sell my home and downsize to an area that is very low cost, uh, and try to do it there and not have a mortgage. But, you know, you can do it. So that's the point of my channel. And as always, again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please put them below. I'll continue to update. God bless.